All right, folks, welcome to today's stream. It helps if I hit the right button. That's all I can say. Today's stream is later than I usually start a stream, but this week, sort of in the last stages of getting my Refactoring to Hexagonal Architecture course page and some of the material up. So a quick preview of what that page is going to look like is this. So this is my self-paced version of the class. So this is the class that I usually teach that actually is now a little over 2 years old, that I've been teaching it live to folks, and I've taught it pretty close to 40 times now. And over the past couple of years, it's been improved, and lots of good feedback and adjustments along the way, both as I get better at explaining it and also better at understanding it. So my goal is to get this thing launched this week. But today, so that means I won't be streaming earlier in the day because I want to spend all that valuable fresh brain power on the course. And I'm fine with having very little brain power left to stream with, because if I end up not having much brain power for that, that's not as big a deal. So today what I'm going to be working on is continuing with the supermarket checkout pricer that I had started on a few weeks ago. So we're up to part 4. So last time we worked on getting sort of the domain layer and the service layer all set up. So let's take a look at that code. Hey there, Custer Daniel. Welcome. So we'd gotten our discount fetcher, so our outbound port defined, and we had a stub implementation of it for testing purposes. So this is our interface, in our application port package, and we also have a product price fetcher. So we now have a way to fetch the product price as well as a discount. And so what I sort of had sketched out last time, let me bring it up. So last time, so we've got in our domain, we've got this stuff, right? We've got our cart, our products, the receipt, which I forget where we left that. And we have sort of discount rules. I don't think we've quite implemented this yet, but we have both a discount fetcher and a product price fetcher as outbound information requests. And so what we want to do with those is we want to stub those out. The other thing we need to do is create an inbound adapter so that we can get input, so that we don't drive everything through tests. It'd be nice to actually see a little bit of some kind of presentation for getting input about what products are being added to the order. For that, I'm probably going to just create a quick and dirty Thymeleaf template Spring MVC page. And we know, what's nice is we know how that adapter is going to call into our service. Once we have that, then we'll start implementing some tiny services. I hesitate to call them microservices because they're not deserving of that at this point. But basically small services that will run separately out of process, for which we'll have to create some stubs and then some real implementations. So we've already got the stubs for our product price fetcher and our discount fetcher. So we've got stubs for those. And so once we have a proper inbound adapter, then we can go ahead and create these little sort of tiny services that will run separately. But for now, let's focus on the product scanner. So what we want from that is basically our cart service has an add product method, and it basically takes a UPC. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. Just going to need a very simple way to have an input field of some kind of numeric field that will allow us to type that in. So really not much to it, but it will be a proper inbound adapter. So let's, I think I've already got, no, I don't. I didn't add that to this project yet. Okay, so let's see. Everything is committed. Yes. By the way, if you want to follow along with the project, the source code is up on GitHub, and it is on a branch. That link will should take you right to the branch that we're currently on. So what we want to do is introduce a framework. We don't have to introduce a framework. We could make our adapter a console-based adapter, right? Terminal, basically have terminal input. But I think we will jump right to a Spring Boot front-end MVC-based input adapter. So for that, we're going to need to bring in some stuff into our POM file. We'll probably have to mostly blow away this stuff. So let's go do that. So actually, what I found is the easiest way is to go to the Spring initializer, and we'll take 271. Our group is that, and our artifact is that. Supermarket checkout pricer. Same thing as the name. So we'll call this checkout pricer. I think we're on version 17 anyway. 18? Let's go for 18. So let's add some dependencies. No Lombok. Sure, let's add that. And we want Spring Web. And we want Thymeleaf as our template. I don't think we need anything else. We don't need any database stuff just yet. Yeah, I think that's... let's bring in validation, because we're going to do validation on the inputs. And we'll, since we're going to deploy it at some point, we'll want the actuator. And I think that's it. So I don't want to generate the whole project. I actually just need the POM file. So we can go ahead and explore, and we can basically copy and paste the POM file. Because right now what we have in our current POM file is basically JUnit 5, assert J, and that's pretty much it. And so we'll get all of those as part of the Spring stuff here. So we'll copy that, and we'll pretty much replace it. That might muck with the name of the project here, but I think we're okay. So first time I'm using 271, so it's got to download that. And I don't need to call it a snapshot. We'll just take that out. That's all fine. That's all good. So let's run all our tests and see that everything hopefully passes. All right, super fast tests. So let's go ahead and do a commit. Added Spring Boot POM XML into POM XML. All right, so now we've got that. Now what we want to do is let's actually grab the the application file. So let's copy that. And that's going to go up here. And we can drop the package info. We don't need that right now. And then we want our, basically the little test that basically runs make sure that Spring starts up. So let's put that in our test directory. Whoops, I put the application in the wrong directory. Let's fix that. That goes here. And then this goes here. All right. So this test should pass, assuming Spring is set up properly. And it is the longest test, the one that's the most time consuming, but that passes. So the first thing I want to do, since we're now, before we brought this in, all of our tests were unit tests. In other words, they were all running in memory with no access to I/O. But Spring is a framework that has lots of I/O stuff built in. So it's considered external, which means I consider tests that use Spring to be integration tests. So my definition of integration is, does it touch a framework or does it touch I/O or hardware? And then it's integration. Lots of people have different definitions. Those are mine. I like them. I find them useful as a way of thinking about the tests. So what I want to do is I want to tag this test and call it integration. And that way I can set up my test configuration. So now we're going to have to do a little bit of work here. So what we want is these are going to be unit tests. So I often put just in front of it because that makes it clear that these are just the unit tests. And what we want to do is we want not all in package, but we want tags. And what we want is anything that's not integration. So those are our unit tests. I'm going to go ahead and store that as a project file. So that'll get added to the repository. Then I want a copy of this that is integration tests. And the difference here is it's only those with integration tags. That depression, you get Haskell PTSD. Sorry about that. And that's it. Let me get rid of these other ones. And I'll store this as a project file. That way it's in the repo. That's all good. Check out Pricer. Okay. So now if I run just the unit tests, it should be 14 tests that run really fast. And it is. And if I run the integration test, it should run one test that's relatively slow. And it does. So let's do a commit for that. What have we got that's unversioned? Let's add those. Added. That's weird. Added Spring Boot application. Bootstrap. Start it up. And test. Split test configurations into unit and integration. All right, go ahead and commit that. Great. So now what we want is we want to be thinking sort of outside in, right? Because what we're doing is we're now working on this inbound adapter. So what do we want from this inbound adapter? Well, we'd like some page that when you navigate to this thing, there's going to be a page. It's going to have an input field. And basically a button. I'm not going to worry too much about styling it right now because that's a rabbit hole. So the first thing that we want to do is write a test against an endpoint that doesn't yet exist. So let's go ahead. Now this is adapter inbound. So what we need to do is we need to start creating some packages for that. So let's go ahead and create a package. So it's adapter in web. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by this. It's always annoying to have, like, can you let me finish typing before you validate? But whatever. So we have an inbound adapter, and it's a web UI adapter. That's the technology. Technically, I should name it like inbound product scanner, because that's sort of the thing that's coming in. But I'm gonna leave it as web. And let's just create it here for convenience sake in our source code. So adapter in web. All right. Now we can create a test. Darn it, I keep forgetting to copy my template for tests. So let's just create a Java class. And this is going to be our product scanner controller. Controller is an overused word, but most people get confused when I use something else. So even though I would normally call this something like just product scanner, people get confused when they're looking at the code if they're coming from other Spring Boot projects where it's like, where's the controller? So I'm going to add that on. And this is a test, so we'll do that. We'll go ahead and this is going to be a web MVC test. Do I need anything else? I think that's it for now. So let's write the test. So the first test I want to write is what happens when I go to the root of the application. So get root path returns. What do I want it to return? So this is going to return a page that will have a 4-minute. I'm not going to be testing the contents because that's a little bit out of scope for the kind of things I want to do. So get root path, then returns. So we want a 200. That's all we really care about at this level. So we'll do, we'll need to auto-wire a mock MVC. And on that, we'll do a mock MVC, perform get of root. I hate this style of writing tests, and this is why I actually do so little testing with a mock MVC. It takes very much the Hamcrest approach of let's do everything as statically imported, undiscoverable methods. And I always forget where the heck it is. So let me go to my, oh, it's web MVC test. That's why it's not working. And what is the import for that? Where is it? There it is. Okay. I swear, you don't use something for like a week, let alone like a month, and you totally forget everything. So this should be it is a web MVC test. I don't know why it's not like letting me import that. So we'll comment that out because we're not using it. I don't know why it wouldn't bring that up. Hey there, David Souls, welcome. Glad you're here. And Shygon TV, welcome. Okay, so what we want is all we care about. So it's pretty much this test, right? Where we basically expect the status. Let me pull in the status. I'll put that in here. And so what we want is and expect status is 200 successful. I mean, I guess I could be more precise. So we'll do that. So this test will fail, right? So we're doing test-driven development, even though we are working on what I would consider an integration test, which reminds me, let's tag this as integration. Right, because this involves framework, which generally implies hardware I/O infrastructure. This is in an adapter, so not everything in the adapter is integration. You can tell my brain is already not at full power. But this test is. This is basically how we kickstart creating our controller, because the controller doesn't yet exist. So if we run this test, it's going to fail. And I'm going to run just this test individually. We'll watch it fail. It's going to return a 404 because there's no controller. So that's our expectation, is that gives us a 404. And indeed, that's what we got. Great. So now we want to make the test pass, and the way we do that is, let me close some of these windows. No, we don't want product. What we want is a product scanner controller. All right, and this is a controller. Let's flip that over. Okay, that's not the test we want. That's the test we want. All right, so to get this test to pass, we need an endpoint. So we'll do a get mapping for root. Return a string because we're going to return the name of a template eventually. And so this is scan product. We're going to return an empty string. Eventually we'll need to return the name of a template because Thymeleaf does not like the fact that there's no template mentioned here. But what I want is I want a different failure. All right, so previously it failed because it was 404. Now my expectation, and again, this is where I use my predictive test-driven development process. Now I expect it to fail because the template's not found. So different failure, still a failure, but making small steps towards getting it to pass. So let's see. And indeed it failed, and it failed for the right reason, which was there was no template with an empty name. So let's go return one with a name. And this we'll call scan. This will still fail, but now it's going to say it can't find the template for scan. And then we'll go create our template. So that's correct. Now we'll go put this in the right place. So this goes into here, create a new directory. Thank you. And underneath we'll go and create directory resources templates. And then in here we'll create an HTML file. And this will be our template. I'll add the form later. Right now I just want to make sure that now the template exists, this should now work. So IntelliJ is happy because now it changed it from a wiggly warning to a link, so I can jump right to the file. Now the test should pass. And it does. Great. So now I'm done with this level of testing. So let's go do a commit since we've got a passing test. Added endpoint and template for product scanner homepage. Go ahead and push those changes. All right, so now I switch gears. So in my course, I talk about how when you're testing inbound adapters, you can test drive them because there's actually two different things to test. There's this framework configuration. Did I set up my endpoints correctly? And then there's my unit test, which is state-based checking to see, did I hook it up to the application correctly? So we did the framework configuration part, right? We had a controller, we had our get mapping. Now I want to write a unit test. Even though it's within an adapter, right, that's outside of my core domain, it's still a unit test. So what we'll do is we'll create, let me rename this test, because this is really not a controller test. This is the, really it's about the web MVC test. And so what I want is now a new test, which is just a product scanner controller test. Flip that over to the other side. And what we want to test here is, well, the first thing is if I call scan product, it returns the name of this page, because I'm not testing that here. I could do view name, but the way I look at it is I want these tests to be as small as possible. And often just like 2 lines like this is good enough. That makes sure I configure it correctly. Now here, I can write a test, which is scan product returns scan template. So basically instantiate our product scanner controller. And so given our controller, when we call scan product, then we can assert that the page is equal to scan. So here this test is going to pass, which makes me a little uncomfortable because I like to see my test failing, but that's fine. We can force it to fail. But I ran the wrong test. Let me run my unit tests. All right, so that passes. Let's make sure it fails by putting nothing in here. This should fail. Just make sure we're calling the method, and we are. So we can go ahead and put it back. All right, let's do a commit because we got that passing. But that's not all we're going to do, because we want to do a bit more with that, right? We don't just want to return an empty page. That's not enough. We want to return a page with a format. So we're going to need some model stuff. Let's go ahead and do a commit. So now what we want to do is we want to assert additionally that this page has a form in it, and that form has a place for the UPC to be entered. So we'll hand in model. We'll need to create a model. And we can use Spring MVC's concurrent model. This causes a compile error, so we fix that. We run all our tests. Nothing should have failed because this was basically a refactoring. All right, we added a parameter that's not used, should not have changed behavior. But our goal is to change this test so we do get new behavior. So now, in addition to asserting what the page is returned, we want to assert on the model that, well, what do we want to assert on the model? What should the model have? The model should have some attribute that is basically the UPC. So it contains attribute, and we'll call it UPC. I guess we don't necessarily, so normally for any non-trivial page where you're using Spring MVC and like a Thymeleaf template, you'd create a form object. But we can start out with just like It's just a request parameter. It's only one parameter. We don't need an object to store that. If we want to do validation, then we can go to an object, but right now we don't need to do that. So, but this is the get of the page. So actually what do we need? We do need the attribute UPC to be there so that it can be pre-filled as empty. So all we care is that the attribute exists. We don't actually care what that attribute is. So this will fail because there's no attribute. And now we can go ahead and add attribute of UPC, not UPS. So if I typed UPS and I thought I got it right, obviously the test will fail. So make sure your tests are specifying the right thing so your test fails. So now this should pass because now I've got an empty attribute there. All right, so now that I've got that, what I want to do is basically create the page. I could just display the UPC, but I may as well go ahead and create the whole form. So let's go ahead and create a form. This method is going to be a post, and the action, oops, is nothing, because it's going to be the th action. That's going to be, we'll post right back to root. And inside of this, we're going to have two things. We're going to have a button, which is going to be a submit button, and it's going to say, add product. I was going to say submit, but I'm like, no, I don't want submit. And so now we need, let's put this in a paragraph. We'll say product, we'll say UPC, and then we'll say input type is text. And here's where we'll link it to the field that we want. So th field is going to be UPC. There we go. So we can preview this page just to make sure it looks okay. So let's do that. Yep, that looks fine. And so now this page, now that we have this page and we're putting something into the UPC, we should be able to run the application and see the page. So let's do that. Let's go run the application. Hopefully I don't have anything else running on 8080. All right, so we see our page. Now, if I click the add product, we expect it to 404 because it's going to do a well, no, not 404. The endpoint exists. We should get a, is it a 415 or 41? I always forget what we get when it doesn't support post, but it does support get. It's one of the two. 405. So that's not unexpected. And post is not supported, so that's exactly what we expected. So we'll go ahead and do a commit where we've got new behavior, scan product page now has a form with input field for UPC. David Souls notes Thymeleaf. That's what this th field is doing. And this th action. But remember that Thymeleaf is HTML. That's one of the great things about Thymeleaf is it's HTML. If I try to preview it, the browser ignores the th stuff. I actually need to add the th here. I always forget to add that. Let's go do that. Do I have... Thought I had a live template for that. No, not surround with. I guess I don't. So what we want is this thing. Do I not have that? XML? I do have it. I just always forget what it is. So it's XMLT. Okay, let me do that. So XMLTH. There we go. Okay, so now it's got the namespace. Not that anybody really cares. I guess we could add a label for there. Now it's happy. All right, so we've got our namespace for the Thymeleaf stuff. We've got our th action, so it knows where to post to. And it's got the field. So now what we want to do is we want to create a place where that field is going to come in. So this is going to be a new endpoint. This is going to be our post endpoint. So we go back to our MVC test. Oops. Let's do that. So those are, so we need not this, but we need, let me close some of these. I don't need these yet. We need our MVC test, and we're going to run another test like this just to test the configuration. So post to root path. Now, when you do web apps as opposed to APIs, you need to do the post redirect get pattern. Otherwise, you get into all sorts of weirdness. So post to root path is redirect. That's what we want. So mock MVC. Perform, we want to perform a post, which is this. And when we post to that, we expect the status is redirect. I don't care which redirection it is, it's just one of them. Yes, I have used HTMX and it's quite nice. I won't be using it in this project because I don't think it's needed, but HTMX is quite nice. All right, so this test will fail because we have no endpoint. So we'll get a 405, right? Because we're posting to an endpoint that doesn't support post. So let's run our integration. Actually, let's just run this test. And so it failed as expected with client error 405 as opposed to redirection. So great. So let's go ahead and create our post mapping to slash. And this is add product. Now add product is eventually going to take string as a parameter, but right now there's no test that's forcing us to do that, so we're not going to do it, right? Because we're doing TDD. We don't write code unless there's a test failing. And when we do write code, we write the minimum amount possible to make the current test happy. So here, all we want to do is return a redirect, and we'll just do that as a redirect string. This should be sufficient to make the test pass. I don't know, can you make... Why is it complaining about slash? It is totally a resolved view. That's interesting. What if I do redirect without that? Does that work? I guess that works. So that's good because that's less than slash. Although I have no idea where does it redirect to by default. I assume slash? I don't know. But our test is passing, so let's go ahead and do a commit. Post endpoint for root now exists and redirects. But we'd like it to redirect to slash, so let's go into our other test to force it to do that. So this is add product redirects to root. It's going to do more than that, but that's what the test is doing right now. So we'll create our controller. Whoops. And we'll call it product scanner controller, add product. We expect that that is going to what we want it to return is a redirect to slash, which it won't do, so it'll fail. So let's go ahead and run now back to running just unit tests. Right, so now we're back in unit test land, which means all the tests run really quickly, right? So I write the minimal amount as integration tests, right? Only a couple of very short tests. And I do all the heavy lifting in my unit tests because they're easier to work with and faster to run. All right, so that fails as expected. Let's fix that. Still don't know why IntelliJ is complaining about that slash, but whatever. That now passes. So let's go ahead and do a commit. All right, so what else do we need? So we've got, so if we run this, we should be able to click a button, click the add product button, and it'll just redirect back to the scan product page. So let's do that. Right, and so trust me, it's redirecting back so quick we don't see it. All right, great. So now what? Well, add product should actually add the product. We will want to write a test where now we get into a bit of trickiness. So far this controller has been completely independent of the rest of the application. We would like it now to hook up to the to our basically our application layer. Right, so we've got our adapter, but nothing is yet talking to the application layer. Right, it's just we can handle incoming requests and it calls the right method. We've got all of that. And so what we want to do is we want to hook it up to the application layer. Now, there is two major schools of thought on the kind of test that I would write next and how I would write it. One school of thought is the thing that is here, right? The application layer, which is a service. You would mock it out and then basically check for behavior interactions. So you'd create a SPI and then look to see, did our controller call the expected method on our application? The other school of thought is you basically instantiate the actual service and then check the state of the system to see did the state change, right? So basically behavior checking, really not even behavior checking, it's method call invocation checking or state-based checking. My preference, because I am very much of the classical TDD mindset, I prefer real objects. So what we want is we need to write a test that is going to encourage us, guide us to create that. So we want more than just add product redirects to root. What we want is a test where add valid UPC, really it's post valid UPC, then product added to cart. Yep, no mocks. Sorry, I was just looking at this error message. That's weird. Okay, so we want our controller. And what we want is when we call that controller add product and we hand in a UPC. So let's go grab one from our other test. Let's go grab that one. Which probably means I should put that into a more central location, but that's fine. We'll leave it here for now. All right. Let's make this compile. So we're going to add a string, but it's not going to be toothpaste UPC. It's just UPC. The default value we're just going to have as an empty string. So what this is going to do, this is basically a refactoring. It's going to add a parameter. It's going to change the signature. So all callers will be changed to pass this in as a parameter, and that should be fine. David Souls means need to boot Tomcat. No, Tomcat is not needed actually for any of my tests. I'm not this test is not running Tomcat's running the mock MVC server. This is not running any server at all. It's a pure unit test. It doesn't actually bring up Spring at all. All right, so we've added the parameter. What is our expectation? We don't care about checking the redirect. We already have a test for that. What we want to assert is something around the cart. So we need access to the cart. So who has access to the cart? Well, that'd be our good old cart service. Now the cart service takes a price fetcher and a discount fetcher. Right now, I'm going to pass in null for those. Basically, these are dummies. Eventually, it's going to get used, but right now, I want to get my test to pass. My test to compile, so I can see it fail. All right, and so now I should be able to ask the cart service. So I can either look at the total and see what the price of the cart is, or I can look at finalize order and see what the receipt is. If we do that, that's a little bit more reliable because we're looking at what actually was added, not just necessarily the price. So what we'll do is we'll assert that contains exactly exactly or only. I think it's exactly. Just want to make sure. I always forget the difference. So, and nothing else in order. Versus contains only. So contains only ignores duplicates. I don't want to allow duplicates. So I want to contains exactly. What does this return? A string. That doesn't help me much. What does right, so it just returns the UPCs. Perfect. So we just want to make sure that that contains exactly our toothpaste UPC. So notice that basically the side effect, as it were, right, the outcome that I'm checking is that if everything is hooked up properly, there should be this product in the cart. So this checks really that add product not only pays attention to this string, but does the right thing with it. Now, you could use a mock to do that, but I see no reason to do that because really I want to make sure not only does it call the method, but that turns out to be the right method to call. So you could mock it up and say it should call method X, and really it should be calling method Y to have the outcome that we want. So I am generally writing like 98% of my tests don't use any kind of mocking framework because I don't need to. All right, so this will fail for a bunch of reasons, mainly which it does nothing with the UPC. Then we'll see that yeah, so so this will fail because, well, it didn't do anything. So let's run our unit test, because this is a unit test. It should fail because it's not there. And we basically got a no products and cart exception, because when we tried to finalize order, it asserted that there was a product in there. Therefore, there wasn't a product. In fact, we probably could have started with an even simpler test. Just make sure no exception was thrown. But this is okay. Now, we need to do a few things. So we need two things. We need product scanner controller needs a reference to our cart service, right? And that's what we said we needed, right? Our controller needs a reference to our application services layer. So let's wire those up, but that's a refactoring. So let's disable this test temporarily, get back to green, and then we can do a refactoring. All right, so our refactoring is basically that we want to hand in cart service. Create the constructor. Create the field for it. Now this red wavy underline is a Spring issue, but we don't need to worry about that just yet. All right, so we have a reference to cart service. We're still not using it, but this should result in no changes to code. But it did, right? We broke it. So this is why I do this when all tests are green, because I can say, oh, actually, I could have done this a different way. So let's do it a different way. So what we're going to want is we're going to want a reference to cart service. And so when we create constructor, what we really want to do is we want to create the constructor with a parameter that is going to be valid for the other tests. So let's create the constructor in a different way. Let's create constructor here, just the no argument one. And what we want is we want a field for cart service. So I'll create a field for that. Let's actually comment out this test so we can get the rest to compile. This should be no op, right? All the tests should pass. So they do. But we don't want this cart service here. We want to have that eventually auto-wire, but initially right now we'd like it passed in as an argument to the constructor. So this is where we use a refactoring to expose this hidden detail. So we'll introduce a parameter, call it cart service. And now everything should still compile and work. And it does. So now everything still should compile and work other than our disabled test, but that was a refactoring. So we can go ahead and commit and say that was a refactor. Introduced cart service to product scanner controller. All right, notice the unit test passed, even though IntelliJ is complaining because really Spring is going to have a problem auto-wiring this. That's not a problem from unit test point of view. We'll fix this when we get to trying to make Spring work. All right, so this test we can now enable, and now it should fail because we've got the cart service reference, but we're not using it here. So it should fail in the same way where it throws an exception with finalize order. Right? No products in cart. Perfect. Now what we can do is we can add the one line of code here, cart service, add product, UPC. Assuming I did this correctly, it should pass. So now my dummies are blowing up. And that is actually should not have been surprising. Because in order to get the price for that, it needed to call a product fetcher. But for this specific test, I actually don't care. So let's do this. Let's create constants for the product price fetcher and constant for the discount fetcher. And let's go ahead and replace those in the other tests here. Actually, I don't know if I need to do that. Let's see. We'll see. And so for these, instead of null, we're going to say equals we're going to basically use some lambdas to say that all prices are 0. And for this one, I don't know why it does that. That's what I wanted. We want to return, what does this expect? Oh, it wants a discount roll. Okay. So we basically have, these are basically dummies. So let's rename them. All right, so now this test will fail because actually, this test might pass. This test is going to be problematic because it doesn't have the correct cart service. So let's give it a cart service that's valid. Let's pull this out into a variable. And then we can replace that. And that should fix both tests. And it does. So now I know that my controller is properly hooked up to and calling the right method on my application service. Let's go ahead and commit. All right. Now we can run all the tests. Actually, I should create an all test. Let's do that. So our Spring tests are going to fail because it can't wire up this thing. So that's not surprising. Let's go, let me just go edit this. This is all tests. Store that in the project file. Just apply that. Okay. So now we need to do some work to make Spring happy. So even though it's auto-wired by default, because Spring Boot recognizes that that's a constructor that it's going to need to inject, I like to put the @auto-wired annotation on there anyway. All right, so this is complaining because cart service is not a class that Spring is aware of. And it can't be because it's an application. And so anything inside the hexagon, right, anything inside of this layer, application layer and core domain, cannot reference anything outside of the hexagon, including frameworks. So I need to wire those up together, but not inside of my hexagon, but as part of my configuration. So let's go and create an @bean. And what we want to tell Spring is, hey, if you ever need a cart service, go ahead and call this method. Now, for now, which fetchers do we add here? So that's a bit of a problem. We need to add something here, otherwise it ain't gonna work. So we have our stubs. And we could sort of convert those to in-memory. Right, so we've basically got our product price fetcher stub. And who configures that? Yeah, so those are configured at startup. But those are in our test directory. So this stub and the stub discount fetcher are only meant for tests. And I should be consistent about my naming. Here I've got stub discount fetcher. Let's rename this because I don't like that name. All right, let's run all the tests. We still expect the Spring test to fail. Oh, right, now we're in the middle of creating this. So we could actually do this just to get at least some of the tests to pass. So let's see what happens. So Spring is fine, except one of the tests that does the post does an add of the UPC and then tries to call something on product price fetcher, which of course fails. But for now, we can actually replace these with, again, sort of a dummy implementation. And that should at least make Spring happy. And there we go. So everything is passing. We'll have to figure out what we want to do about these. Do we always want to, like, we need something there. Do we want, even if the services are available and up and implemented, do we always want to hit them? Or do we want to be able to run this application locally without having to go out and hit external services and kind of without having to run those other services? So in that case, we might want in-memory versions of those. But for now, all that I cared about was getting our test to pass, and it does. So wired up bean, so Spring is happy when for a cart service implementation. All right, so we now have configured Spring to tell it, hey, if you need a cart service, call this method. This is, I usually put the application sort of bootstrap startup in the root package, because generally this scans files all the way down. There are other ways to do it, but this is how I usually start doing it. And then our controller then is now happy because it talks to a cart service, and we can add a product. So the next question is, do we want anything else from the front end? Right, so we've got a way to type in a number and have it added, but from the UI, we have no way to see sort of where things are. We could display the total price. We could ask the cart service for the total price and inject that into the page. So let's do that. We don't currently have a great way to get the products that were added. Because we sort of don't know what they are until we actually ask for the receipt. At some point, we'll probably need to fix that. But for now, let's do it so that when we scan a product, in addition to having an input field for the UPC, it will also show the current price for all the contents of the cart. All right. So does that change anything from here? Do we need another endpoint? Well, we do need to do some modification here. Because right now, we weren't specific and explicit about where does Spring get this string from. Now, it'll sort of automatically match it, I think. I always forget what the default behavior is. I guess we can try it. Let's actually try the application, because I always forget, is this good enough, or do I need to tag it with request param? So let's save that. I believe I need to specify it, but I always forget. There's actually no way for me to know. Technically, add product we should probably validate our incoming UPC. So let's do that. Then that'll help us ensure that it's working properly. So if we want to modify the behavior of this, we need to go to our test. So let's go to our test. Post invalid UPC, then what do we want to do? Redirect to error page. So we're about to do this again. So let's extract this to a method. Or sorry, at least the cart service. Create cart service with dummies. And then here we can go ahead and find duplicates and replace that. And we can just inline that. Okay. And let's move this down to the bottom where we like our private methods. Great. So I will basically inline this. Oh, no, I don't want to inline that. What am I doing? So I want this. And then what I want is product scanner controller, add product. So this is invalid. And we want to assert is that the page that it returns is equal to redirect error. I'm not going to bother creating that page. We'll do something more sophisticated where the refreshed page here would show a little error message. But for now, this is sort of easier to detect. So let's run our unit test. This should fail because we're not redirecting that based on any kind of error. So what we want to say is if UPC we want essentially blank. So if it's blank, we want to redirect to error. So this should now pass. Oh, but our add product now fails because it was passing in that. So let's have it pass in an actual valid UPC, and now that should pass. Hey needs are pretty okay. Yeah, that's why I chose this blank. Eventually we'll do more validation than this, but right now I'm kind of trying to create the simplest possible input here. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm not going to worry about anything else because I'll have when I set up the annotation, I'll have a default. All right, so all our tests passed. Let's go ahead and that's new behavior. Redirects to error page. If UPC is blank. All right. So now, if I run all the tests, my MVC test here, I think that'll pass because it's going to redirect either way. I'm not actually checking where it redirects to. So let's run all the tests. Ah, okay. So here it is null, and we want to protect against that. So there are a couple of things we can do. We can say, look, let's not pass in an invalid thing. Let's actually pass in a param of UPC being 0, 1, 2, 3. And where we want it to redirect to is slash. So normally I don't check the redirected URL, but here what I'm checking is Spring recognizing this? Am I redirecting to the right place? Or do I need the actual annotation on the field? So let's see. So apparently that's sufficient. However, I don't ever want null. So let's stick in and I could write another test to force me to do that. So let's do that. Let's temporarily comment that out. So this should now fail again with the null pointer exception. And it does. And now let's do at request param. And we want name is UPC and default value that's such a weird default value. We want to actually just be empty string. So now this should pass because by default the value is empty, and so when we do is blank, it'll redirect to error. So let's see. Yep. So redirected to error. We could actually leave it that way and change our expectation. But we might add more parameters, so let's leave it. Let's leave it like this. All right. So now that we're adding the parameter, it should go back to passing. It does. Awesome. All right. Let's commit. Added at request to provide default empty string for incoming UPC parameter. All right, so now we're sure that this method is integrated properly with our framework. So that means we can now go back and say, what do we want our home page to display? We would like it to display the current, at least total price, the total cost of items, products that have been added to the cart. So that's going to be another attribute. So let's go modify our tests. So when you're doing TDD, as a reminder, you don't always add new tests. So someone on my Discord earlier today asked such an awesome question. And by the way, my Discord is free, totally open for you to ask questions about the stuff you see here, as well as anything related to Java, Spring, hexagonal architecture, etc. So the question I was asked is how do you TDD removing features? And removing is a little bit different, but from the point of view of a test, you basically want to recreate, either modify an existing test or write a test where you want to, it's currently doing something, like maybe you're taking away an endpoint. So it's currently responding to that endpoint with a 200 or maybe a redirect, and you want to change it to become a 404, right? Not found. So you write a test for that, probably undoing or modifying an existing test. And then you delete the endpoint and the test should pass. And you keep doing that, writing tests, because it's removing a feature is a change in behavior just as much as adding a feature is. Yeah, join the Discord. So what we want to do is we want to change the behavior. Really, it's a little bit of additional behavior where we want scan product when we do add product. That scan product, actually we can just say when we first call scan product, it should be 0. There should be a total and it should be 0. So let's do that. So it's more than scan product return scan template, return scan template with UPC with empty UPC and cart total. So I think, again, we don't care about what's in that attribute, just that it's there, just that something's there. Sort of going back and forth. Do I want to do a little bit more checking? I think this is sufficient. So let's run now just back to our unit tests. So that fails as expected because the attribute's not there. So here we can do model, add attribute, total, and basically add an empty attribute. That would be sufficient. So clearly that's not quite enough. So let's modify our test to be, instead of contains attribute, let's have get attribute. Pull that out to a variable total. Let's just say it's a string. And that it's equal to zero. I actually don't know what I want it to be. Is it 0 or 0.00? Hey, Viable Clan member. Nice to see you. Let's make this fail, and then we'll actually get the information from the cart and see what it says. So it's a big decimal. I don't know how it's gonna stringify itself. So let's see. Oh, duh. It put it as an object. Do I want to call toString on it? Yeah, let's call toString on it. Now, is it to plain string or to regular string? To plain string. Hey, why'd you open that up? To plain string. So now the scale, is the scale 0 and so it'll just be 0, or is the scale have a default that'll be 2 decimals? Let's find out. I guess it was exactly 0. All right. So now that we know that that gets displayed, not only does the add product redirect to root, we could write a test that goes through the whole thing. At this level, I don't feel it to be necessary. I know total returns the right value because I've got tests against total. Hey there, Mulo. I know only how to use a phone. I know nothing about programming them. Sorry. So let's commit, because that's a change in behavior. So added cart total to model upon get of root. All right. And now let's modify our template to actually show it. So let's put that here. So what does that look like? That looks fine. And that's going to be, what do we say, total? So now if we run the application, as we add items, we won't say anything because the default pricer is always 0. How about we make the default pricer always something other than 0? So let's go back to our application. And let's make every price 1. Price of everything is 1. All right. That shouldn't change any of our tests because our tests don't use that code. But if we run the application, it won't matter what UPCs we enter. Every product costs $1, right? A true dollar store. Unlike dollar stores these days, which not everything, fewer and fewer products are actually $1. All right. So I got total 0. Add product. Say what now? Why did that redirect to error? Shouldn't have been empty. I wonder if I used the wrong thing here. let's do this. So that looks fine. Why does it think it's not valid? Should only be let's do this. I want network. So we did a post. What was in the request? Holy cow. Hey, Strager. Welcome, folks. Thanks for... Wow, that's a big party. 164 folks. Welcome, folks. Please speak of the virtues of Java. Java is awesome. I don't know. Java is all I know. I don't know if that's sufficient. All right, yeah, you go do what you got to do, Strager. Thanks for bringing your family here. Welcome, folks. You caught me at like trying to troubleshoot a silly little problem, which is why did the request, it did a post. Did a post back to the page. Yeah, Acid Spark, you go hide. So that's the preview shader. What? That's the request URL. That's the post. Got a 302. I wonder if that wasn't the original request. This was the post. And that was the response. But what was the request? Was the request empty? Hold on. Was my form not set up properly? Let's go back. Yeah, that's my mess up. All right. So I knew it was a Thymeleaf issue because I had tests for everything else, right? So I have tests that tell me if I pass in an empty string or nothing, then it redirects to error. If I pass in a valid string, then I know it does the right thing. So I know all of my code works. I figured the template is where I've got the problem. So I'm using th field, and I shouldn't be using th field because it's not there's no form object. And this is where I'm like always like, okay, how do I do this in Thymeleaf again? So Thymeleaf, I don't need you anymore. Thymeleaf basics. So for form, not texts, not standard expressions. I don't need. So that's the action value. No, that's attribute. Template layout, I don't care about. I mean, I could set the name and value. I could set the name and ID manually. So let's just do that, because I know that works. So name, UPC, each value is the incoming UPC, if there was any. That should be sufficient. Let's try it again. By the way, for those of you who are have joined us and hung around or are hanging around and are actually interested in Java, I have a Discord, and it's all Java all the time. Not all Java, I would say it's 90% Java, where we talk about Java and TDD and hexagonal architecture and design and testing and TDD and all that good stuff. All right, so let's try this again. Is the application running? No, let's run it. Hey there, Ivantech. Welcome. All right, let's try this again. All right, so I got the default. There we go. All right, so I don't want default anymore. Let's take that out. You despise Java. Well, you don't have to hang around. I won't be offended. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 6. All right, so we can see that the total is increasing. So everything's working fine. But I seem cool. Oh, thanks. All right, so let's stop our project. So we figured out what was wrong. I basically didn't have the name because it didn't extract it, because it's not a field on a form object. All right, so let's commit that. Fixed form input field for single parameter attribute. And in case you were curious about the code, you can always take a look at the GitHub repo. It's totally open source. By the way, I guess I didn't introduce what the hell I'm doing. So I'm basically creating an additional set of examples. So an example project for my hexagonal refactoring to hexagonal architecture course that's coming out very shortly. Pre-sale is going to happen this week, and then it'll go on. That'll be released next week. So in order to do that, one of the things that I know as an instructor, educator, teacher, coach, is that you can never have too many good examples. So I already have examples in my course from other stuff that I use, other applications, but I'm basically creating this one from scratch because it has slightly different. It basically sort of is simulating a supermarket self checkout kind of thing. So you scan products, which I'm simulating through typing numbers in the form, and then it adds it to a cart. It can apply certain discounts. So sort of the architecture basically looks like not that. Where is my architecture diagram for this? It is this it? No. This is it. So basically, this is the architecture, hexagonal architecture, in case you couldn't tell by the shape. Here we've got the product scanner. So this is the inbound, what's called an inbound adapter, and that is pretty much done. So that's what I've implemented. Then I have external services. So fetching discounts. Do you get a discount on this product? Fetching the actual product price. What is the actual product price? And then I'll have an outbound thing that'll be a receipt display that'll basically just dump it, basically the final receipt with all the discounts applied and all the product information. And so that's what this project is all about. Again, sort of another demonstration example project of hexagonal architecture. MDOS Wolf, POM files scare me. Yes, POM files scare me. Although not as much as Gradle build files, because I've seen my fair share of horrible Gradle files. Confirmation YAML is worse. Well, any YAML is worse, no? This is why I do not convert my Spring project property files to YAML, because I'm... Yeah, let's not go to YAML. Oh, you like my design? Thanks. So in case you're interested in more information about my course, you can sign up in my newsletter. In addition to stuff about my course, I talk a lot about how to make your code more testable, mainly focused on Java, mainly from the point of view of test-driven development and hexagonal architecture. And of course, you can visit my site where I've got a bunch of articles about test-driven development and other stuff. And yes, I was lucky enough to get TED.dev. Not as expensive as I thought it would be. It only ended up being less than $400. So it's mine. All right, so where are we? We've got, yeah, I've paid way more than that for not as good domain names. So we've got our product scanner. We can now enter it, and we know it interacts with our cart service. We know everything inside of here, our domain cart and product and receipt and discount rule. We know that all that stuff works because I've got tests for all that. I know the cart service works. I know the product scanner is now hooked up to it. We've got basically dummies or stubbed out fetchers. And do we have time to implement one of these fetchers? Yeah, let's do it. So let's implement a separate service. I am not going to call it a microservice. It isn't just going to be a tiny service. So let's go ahead and create a new project. New project. And this will be a Spring Initializer project. This will be, yeah, nano service, Charlie did, yeah. What are we calling this? This is our discount fetcher. So this is our discount service. Discount service. Where are we going to create this? This will go in Ted Young. Yes, sure. Create a Git repository, Java, Maven, dev, discount. I don't need that. That's fine. Artifact discount service. That's our package name. JDK 18. Java. That looks good. One of these days, I love IntelliJ, but one of these days they will figure out how to get dialogues to get to the right size, right? This one isn't so bad where it was sort of cut off. There's some dialogues where it's like really teeny tiny. Then I have to expand the whole thing. All right, what do we want in here? We want none of those. We'll need Spring Web just because we're going to create an API, a single endpoint API. Don't need anything else there. Don't need our Thymeleaf. This is not going to, that's just going to be a service. So there's no Thymeleaf templates needed. Do I need test containers for that? No, I do not. I may need to add test containers to this project, but not for the service, not for the nano service. I don't think I really need anything else. I think it's just Spring Web. All right, let's create it. All right. We can delete that. We don't need it. What? How could help MD have a usage? Unless you're considering the .ignore file to be a usage? Yes, of course. Thank you. It's in the git ignore. All right, fine. There, now it's not in the... There. Now you're happy. Great. All right. So let's go ahead. And we want server port. What port should we have? We don't want it to be 8080 because that's our main services port. What port should we make this one? Somebody give me a number between 1 and 100. Yeah, 69, of course. Nice. All right. Always one in the crowd. So we'll have this at port 8069 when it runs locally. When it's deployed to the cloud, then I don't need the port. But when it's run locally, that's where it'll go. All right. So what do we need? We need an endpoint. What endpoint do we want? This is the discount service. Oh, I probably should have written the pricer service first. Let's go write the pricer service. So I'll need another number for that port. So new project. This is price service. And that goes in Ted Young, which I wish it would remember. Ted. That looks all good. And again, here all we'll need is just Spring Web. All right, let's remove this and this. What version did it pull? Oh, good, 385, great. Okay. And let's open this up. So give me another number between 1 and 100. Or technically 0 and 99. Let's see, so I won't need any templates. I won't actually need any static either. So I can delete those directories. Well, I'll leave them there. They're not going to hurt anything. They're actually not going to get committed. Come on, somebody give me a number between 0 and 99. Your number will be immortalized in the service. Okay, did I really need to specify an integer? My bad. I'm going to round that down. Because pi is 3, right? That's what I was told. That's what I learned in school. All right, so got our services. So this service needs to take an incoming UPC, right, product code, and basically supply its price. So let's go write that test, because we start with our tests. So this is going to be basically a similar test to the one we wrote here that kicked us off on our integration part. So I'll grab this. Let me close discount service because I'm going to get confused if that project is still open. All right. And so we want to test. So this is going to be price service web MVC test. And we'll auto wire in our mock MVC. And so our first test is going to be, so what's our endpoint going to be? Prices. So prices endpoint. So get to prices endpoint returns to 200. Okay. So mock MVC will perform a get against prices. don't know why IntelliJ's gotten really bad at this. It really should be none of these. So I don't know why. I don't know why it's not giving me a better set of values. Usually it does, but now it seems hung up on that. So that's a good name for an endpoint. You want how much? So let's go. Oh, that's not where we want to be. Let's go back here. Let's go grab these imports and paste them into there. So get to prices, and what we expect is that status is okay. Things are okay. All right. Yes, I heard about the BMW wanting to charge a monthly fee for the seat warmers. I don't know. How tone deaf do you have to be to think that that's a good idea? Like, how not thoughtful do you have to be to think that that's the way to go? Yeah, no, I'm already paying for, like, so I'm already paying for the product. Don't make me pay for little features. I actually considered that a bug. I'm not. It's possible that this is a newly installed version of IntelliJ, and so it hasn't quite learned what stuff I use frequently. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I understand subscription pricing, but you do that for things like, you know, they used to charge for, like, you know, OnStar and you know, GPS stuff. Of course, now that's all included in our phones, so we don't need that anymore. But seat warmers. All right. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the test. So this test should fail because there is absolutely no possible way this could work. There are no endpoints. So I got a 404. And that's exactly what I get. Great. So let's go ahead and then create. We'll create our actual controller. So this is our PriceService, our price controller. Do I need the word service in there? Service is the name of the app, not the name of the controller. We'll call it price controller. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Citizenship is a monthly sub. So let's rename this test because it's really about the controller. All right, and go back here. Let's flip that over there. So the test fails. Let's make the test pass. Now, eventually we'll require a parameter, but right now we're just gonna do this. We've gone through the empty string thing, so let's. Oh, what am I saying? This is not WebMV. This is not WebMVC. Sorry, this is not a template. This is actually an object. So what do I want to return? Can I return an int? How about I'll just return a string, and the string is just 10. And it's not at controller, it's at rest controller. I'm so used to doing the other controllers. Yes, assert true is true. That'll work. Won't get you very far. All right, so now this should work. It's so funny how I'm just so not used to writing API endpoints these days. All right, so that passed. Let's go commit it. I'll push that later. I gotta figure out how to do that. Oh, actually, hold on. Turn that off, turn that on. There we go. Okay. All right, so now we have the endpoint. Now we got to figure out what do we actually want. We probably will never want to redirect. What do we actually, probably won't want to post either. So what will we actually want it to do? Technically that's enough, right? Everything is $10, right? Inflation. It's not the dollar store anymore, it's the $10 store. Especially if you're in the Eurozone, dollars are very expensive. Which is great for me because I'm in the US. I want to buy something from Europe. Not so good for me because I want to sell into Europe. My stuff is more expensive. But that's the way it goes. Okay. But we probably don't want to return a string. We probably want a proper JSON blob. So let's do that. Let's write a test for our controller. So it's just a regular controller test. So let's tag this one as, sorry, not tag this one. This one is going to be a unit test. So let's go ahead and create some configurations for our tests. Let's run. I didn't actually want to run it, but fine, let it run. So we want to duplicate this. So this is all tests. Then we want integration tests, and that will be tags, integration, and then we want just unit tests, and that's going to have the tag of basically not integration. All right. I'm Das Wolf. Right now I'm building 4 APIs as TypeScript-based lambdas inclusive of Swagger Open API. I'm not doing Swagger stuff, Swagger Open API. It's just extra work. Viable clan members, is that because EU charge tariffs? No, it's because the currency exchange rate right now is been pretty close to parity. $1 US dollar equals €1. It was not like that for quite some time. It's been usually like $1.20, $1.30 per euro. So dollars have gotten expensive. Blame worldwide inflation. Actually, blame worldwide inflation and US inflation. And a bunch of other things, which I will not get into. All right. So what we want is a test that when we, so price endpoint returns product price object, DTO. Hey, MVD Dev. The pre-sale of my Hexagonal Architecture course is this week, and then it'll come out either later this week or next week. But thank you for asking. I've got, in case you're interested, where'd it go? Where is that? I'm looking for... I must have closed it. Okay, anyway. Yeah, I've been working on the landing page for the course today. So that's looking good. Well, thank you for patiently waiting. Okay, so what we want is new price controller. When we call price4, what we want is an object, not a string. So we want a price response. No, that's not the name of the variable, that's the name of the type. Let's go create that class. I think I can make it a record. I always forget every time I do this. Does Jackson support records? Let's try. So that'll go in there for now. And what it has is basically, it's going to be string UPC and big decimal price. I wonder what that looks like. I guess we'll find out. I don't know what that looks like when it gets translated to JSON. I'm guessing it encloses it in a string, but I'm not sure. I've seen TRPC written your own routing callback, trying to reduce code dependencies. I totally am with anyone who's concerned about reducing dependencies. It's one of the things that drives me a little bit crazy, is seeing so many dependencies pulled in for that don't really pay for themselves. Let's do that. Did it put price response in the wrong place? Yes, it did. This should go not in the test directory, but in the source directory. Okay. And then this, that, and then this is new, that and that. Oops. And then this is big decimal 10. Oh, come on. No, the close of the expression is here. Oh, you just totally messed this up, didn't you? Let's try that again. New price response. There we go. All right. So that compiles. Let's go back to our test. So now that compiles. And so what we'd like to assert is that price response actually, let's return 0 for this. So we want a new price response that is 0987, and we want it to actually be 10. So we're going to expect this to fail. Because 10 is not 0. Now, I just told it to run unit tests, but it ran this one because I forgot to tag it. So let's tag this. Okay. Because unit tests should run fast. Fast, fast, fast. Okay, great. So that fails the way we want. Let's push this out. Let's make it pass. But price4 is supposed to take, so let's do a commit. So commit that. And what we want though is this is actually supposed to be a parameter. So let's push this out to a parameter. And then we can push this out as a UPC. That should still pass. And great. So now we can commit that. All right. That might actually be enough. Let's try it. Let's run. I might want to put this as a request param. So should this be a param, or is this actually an identifier and it should be part of the path? So should it be a path param? Actually, it should be a path param, shouldn't it? Let's fix that. So let's go here. I don't want to get the content as string, but I don't want to write a more complex test. We can just do sort of a quick validation. Actually, I'm going to say UPC. Okay. So this will fail because we're not returning anything. We're also not asserting. Would help if we asserted. So let's take this, pull this into a variable, and then we can now assert. Actually, we want to assert so let's pull and assert that, and we want to say assert that contains contains we can do that. So we want to contain not only UPC but also 987 and what do we call it? Price, and somewhere in there should be 10. Let's see. This is... I have no idea what this is going to do. Undiswolf asks for the reasoning behind making it a path parameter. So this has to do with, am I thinking about this endpoint as a resource? Yeah, I can use JSON path. I just never remember how to use it. That's why I didn't use it. So do we think about this as a resource, right? Sort of REST-like. Or do we think about it as like a search query? So if we treat it as like kind of REST-like, we're basically just getting whatever the resource is, and the resource is identified by its UPC. The other option is we can say, no, it's really a query around prices. Then it would be a query parameter. So for this tiny service, it almost doesn't matter. And so, I mean, or not almost, it doesn't matter. And so it's more about how do I think about it? And so I think about it as this service has a bunch of prices. You don't have to query for it. The only thing you're going to look up is UPC, and therefore each sort of, if you think about prices as a directory, it has a directory full of UPCs that have content, and I'm just returning it. Right? That's really what a resource means, is in a sense there's just some content there at that address. Yeah. The end result is the same, but it's really, you know, how are you thinking about this? If you are to query across sort of two variables, like, hey, give me, you know, where the UPC starts with this, which that wouldn't make sense, but you can look up what are called UPC categories. You could say, hey, find me, you know, products that are dairy of this type. Then you'd use a search query. So, let's see what happens. I don't think this is going to pass because I'm not sure the UPC is expected 200. Right, because it didn't match against anywhere because we didn't put in UPC. So path variable, thank you IntelliJ for writing that for me. So now that should work. Yeah, so if it's sort of like I think about it as like, is this a nested directory? Like here is where the hierarchy has a specific order, right? So I want to find, you know, I'm searching for inventory for a certain product. So the first parameter is warehouse. It's always going to start at the warehouse, and then it's going to start out what aisle is it. And then it's going to start out what shelf is it. And then it's going to look at what box is it. Since it's a very well-defined hierarchy, you can use the slash this and that and so on. But that can also get a bit awkward. And so it, you know, would you ever search for, hey, I don't know which warehouse it's in, but it's, you know, could you basically search for it without one of those parameters? No, because the shelf is identified by what aisle it's in, and the aisle is defined by what warehouse it's in. So it makes no sense to leave out warehouse. Versus you're looking for a product, it makes sense to leave out all sorts of things. If you're querying, I want a book that has this author, or maybe it has this title, right? You can leave one of those out. Then you're not going to do it as a hierarchical thing. All right, well, you know that worked. So now let's run the application. And that'll probably be the last thing I do because it is dinner time for me. So let's go open our HTTP client, create request. So we want localhost. What port are we on? We're on 03. Yeah, it's sort of like if there's a lot of path entries, it may not be efficient for humans, but if it sort of, in a sense, requires that you have that entire sort of path, right, literal path to that specific thing. But it is hard. It can be harder to read. Yeah. So what we want is prices. And we're saying 0987. So let's run that. Oh, I don't know why I'm looking here. It's here. And there we go. There's our JSON. And so I guess big decimal is naked. That might be problematic. Because if there's a decimal, that might not be parsed correctly on the other side. So we'll have to think about that. But we've got our, this is working as we expected and as our test said it should. So that's all good. All right. I think that's it. This is a good place to call it. So thanks to Strayer for bringing his family along. Thanks for those of you who continue to hang out despite Java probably not being your favorite language. I stream this kind of content a lot. This week, I'll generally be streaming around the same time. So this week, because I'm working on releasing my course, I'm reserving most of my brain power for earlier in the day for working on the course. And then most days I'll probably stream from like 5 to 7. Normally I stream earlier in the day, but if you join my Discord, totally free, I announce when I'm going live, sometimes even more than 5 minutes in advance. Yeah, amazing. Because my schedule is all over the place. Because there are some days where I'm teaching, because I also do coaching, technical coaching and instruction. So there's some days I'm busy with that. So join the Discord. You can also follow. I appreciate all the follows. Let's see if there's somebody to raid. I'm open to raid thoughts. I don't see any of my typical, what do they say? I don't see any of the usual suspects. So I'm open to raid ideas. Oh, thanks for the bits, I'm this wolf. Appreciate it. Yeah, and the Discord, by the way, if you have questions like that, about stuff I do on stream or just general Java and Spring and TDD stuff, ask away. I've got a bunch of channels for that specific stuff. So I don't see anybody that I know that I usually follow that I would be willing to raid. So unless y'all have an idea, we can just say, have a great rest of your day. For some of you, it might be Tuesday already. And so again, I have a thoughts on chicken nuggets. I'm on a low carb diet, so chicken nuggets are reserved for special occasions. So if you want to know more about my course, my hexagonal course, hexagonal architecture course, which is part of my Making Your Code More Testable series, you can sign up to my newsletter, but I don't just sell that. Mostly what I do is I send out emails about the stuff that I do on stream and the stuff I do with my clients to make their code better. All right, we'll call it here. So thanks so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the follows and thanks for the bits. I'm Das Wolf. And hopefully see you on a future stream. So have a great rest of your day. Go get some nuggets. Thanks. All right. See ya.